Welcome to the Sugar and Strength podcast. I'm your host, Kayla. I am a people-pleasing perfectionist, and as such, sometimes it can get a little uncomfy to look inward, as some of you might relate to. And today's conversation, I'm excited for you all to hear if you relate to that people-pleasing perfectionism, because I sit down with Cailee Rae. She is a relationship coach, and we talk about getting vulnerable, getting intimate, what that looks like, how to cultivate those connections, both with maybe a partner or with yourself, because let's be honest, a lot of times we're just not creating that pause in our life. So she talks about doing things like checking in, whether that's again with a spouse, whether that's with yourself, and gives us lots of actionable tips along the way. I met Cailee about 3 weeks ago at a women's business retreat in Wisconsin, and immediately I knew that this was a person that I wanted to hear more from. So I'm super excited for today's conversation. And to give you an idea of Cailee's background, Cailee is a sex and relationship coach with over a decade in the wellness space. She's known for helping people reclaim their worth and build radically honest relationships, beginning with themselves. With a background in bodywork and spirituality and experience speaking at events and leading retreats, she creates safe spaces for deep emotional intimacy, honest communication, and meaningful connection. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation today with Cailee, and I know there's going to be a ton of nuggets of information that you're going to take home from this. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Cailee Rae. A few weeks ago, we both were at Sister Circle Summit in La Crosse, Wisconsin, so a women's business retreat, and it was spectacular. And I got to meet you, and immediately I was just attracted to your vibe. I was like, this girl is a vibe. Like, I love all the like raw, authentic granola-y vibes of you. I was just like, I need to know more about this girl. And I just really appreciated, I think, in conversation we had at the mastermind dinner, I had the opportunity to be at your table, and I just really appreciated you in conversation. You were fully present and you were so disarming. I feel like you have a very great sense about you where I just feel comfortable, and I can see like your work as a coach, a relationship coach, how that probably benefits you with your clients. So maybe for listeners who don't know you, can you share a little bit about yourself? What sparked the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. And we kind of touch on human design often. That's become more of like a trendy topic. And so I always preface this by saying I am a Manny Gen for people that don't know.
Me too. I just found out because
Are
I didn't
you?
know about human design until 3 days ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like one of the first questions I ask people now because it just helps me to understand energetically, like, what kind of human we are, right? So I feel like it's given me permission. Maybe you can attest to this too, that it's okay that I'm multi passionate. And for so long, so many people were like, girl, you just need to narrow your focus to one thing. And I was like, literally, physically, I cannot do that. And I'm finally coming around to the other side of like really focusing in on the fact that I'm a relationship coach. And yes, I offer massage, I offer Reiki, I teach yoga, I pour candles. Like there are all these other passions that I've been doing for over a decade that just make me who I am, but they really support the work that I'm doing. So sure, I can use that label relationship coach, right? But I'm also an intuitive healer. Like there's so much more going on beneath the surface. And now that I know that I'm a Manny John, I'm like, well, that's why. Quit making me feel bad for being so awesome. Like this is just by design, you know?
Can you share a little for maybe listeners if they don't know what human design is and what it's manifesting generator, right? When you say Manny
Yeah.
Gen, like what does that mean in the scope of human design?
Yeah, and I am not the expert. There are so even like Holly from Sister Circle and so many other women that like this is their whole jam now. And I appreciate them because I don't have the capacity to want to learn all the things. But what I know, and you can just Google human design and you can find a free like quiz or chart where you put in your date of birth, the location, like the city that you were born in, and the time that you were born. And then it's able to pull. And what human design does so well is it's literally combining astrology and like feng shui. I mean, literally every sort of, you think of like enneagrams and all these different personality tests, and it's really pulling them all together And it does a good job of telling you not only what your design is, but then it goes into all this detail about like what area of the body you make decisions from, right? Some people are like splenic. And so sometimes they like know right away they want to do something. Mine is more solar plexus. So although I still make decisions quickly, I usually need to like sleep on it first. And so it just kind of helps you. And for me, especially when I was in relationship with my ex, to know that he was a projector or is a projector. And I was like, oh, that explains a lot. Because to people that don't understand design, projectors tend to be people that need a lot of downtime, and maybe they'll watch TV to sort of clear their mind and regroup. And they often need to be asked for their wisdom. They're not going to just offer it freely, and they're served better by doing that, right? So Holly, my friend Jamie, they are projectors. They kind of sit back, they take in all the information, they look at the big picture, and then they can guide from that place when they're asked. Now, if you break down a manifesting generator, that's a second design. Not only do I have the ideas, the manifestations, but I also do them as the generator. So if you're solely a manifester, you're more of an idea person. If you're solely a generator, you're more of like a doer kind of person, right? It kind of differentiates that way. And then the fifth design, so we've got projector, mani-gen, manifestor, generator. There's also a reflector, and that's like less than 1% of the population. I have yet to meet a reflector. And if you imagine, they're very much like a mirror, right? So they're reflecting back. And so I can't wait for the day that I meet a reflector. Like I'm so excited to know like what kind of energy they exist in,
You're
you
going to
know?
geek out so hard.
I know. I'm gonna be like, it's time. Like, I'm sure it's gonna happen in divine timing, right? Like, right when I need to meet them. So,
How about for you? At what point were you like, okay, I'm doing massage and Reiki and all of these things, and then all of a sudden you go from touching your clients to wanting to talk to them? Was there a turning point that happened or something
yeah.
that really drew you into going deep?
Yeah. Massage, I started first. And that was just like coming from a place of I was a bill collector for my job and I was getting yelled at and swore at. And I got this gift card to a local spa and I had this session for like, it was like a body treatment, but I was still on a massage table. And I remember laying there in that peace and quiet going, oh, there's something so much nicer I could be doing than bill collecting. So I started out with massage and I don't even know if I realized back then that literally what I've been doing this past decade is healing my own nervous system, coming from a traumatic childhood, an alcoholic father who thought owning a bar was a good idea, and just all the chaos that came from my childhood. It was this opportunity to like slow down and settle, find some peace amidst the chaos, because life is still chaotic, but your capacity to handle it looks different when you're doing this work. And it just kind of, evolved into all the other things, adding the Reiki. Yoga was something I started probably a decade ago too. And then I was like, oh, that yoga teacher that's checking me into this class, she's a vibe. She's like, I didn't know then, right? I just thought she was cool. But I'm like, she's like grounded and she seems so confident. And like, I want what she's got. And so then, of course, an opportunity for yoga teacher training presented itself and all these things showed up. Then Ayurveda, a sister science to yoga, talks about like the science of life, if you will. And so the way I show up, there was a retreat down in Florida at an Ayurveda place in Alachua, and I went down there and I spent a weekend or a week just getting some services, yoga, all these things. And I came back from there with the book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I read through that book and I was like, duh. Duh. This stuff, I've got these clients coming back month after month with the same tight neck or the same low back. And of course, I'm telling them, go do yoga, do these stretches. And some of them were, most of them weren't, right? You PT people that don't do your PT exercises, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, why do these people not get better? Right? Like, I get sometimes they have shitty mattresses or it's a posture thing at work, and maybe we can fix that a little bit. But I just started to recognize that, like, it's underneath the muscle. And for some of my clients that are a little more aware or open minded, I invite them when I'm working on this spot that's maybe troublesome for them to just notice what comes up for them. So, like for some people, I'm working on their low back and they're like, man, all that takes me right back to the time I was in the military. And it's like, yeah. So, what little t, maybe trauma or big T from the military lives there? Because why, when I push on it, does your brain go to that thing? And so, when I'm working at people's necks, just kind of saying, like, what comes up for you when I'm working on your neck? That's probably the thing that's like literally stuck there. And so, yeah, it's just been this shift where it's like, if you want to come see me month after month for massage and give me your money to do the same thing over and over again, I love you and I will help you. And also, like, as far as integrity is concerned or ethics, it's like, no, I want to figure out what else is going on so that you can come get a massage because you want to, not because you feel like you have to.
That book was very heavy. The Body Keeps the Score. I think I had to read that in small doses because it just brings a lot up. And essentially, the short story is your body keeps the score, whether that's, like you said, little t, big T trauma. I think women, especially, may be internalizing a lot of that. And I would imagine not only in your body work, it sounds like you had certain patterns or trends that you saw, like the tight neck, maybe the lower back. How about in your relationship work, whether it's individuals or working with couples? Are there patterns that you notice surface, like something that you see come up repeatedly and you feel a bit like a parrot?
Yeah. And it's like, it's also comforting to know like you guys aren't alone, right? This is a thing that we're going to see over and over, and a lot of it's like that's our society. Like of course this is what's going on. So I'd say there's a couple right off the top that are pretty typical. One, I encourage all of my clients to have weekly check-ins, whether they're in a relationship or whether they're single. Now, I journal and meditate every day because I am me, right? But for people that feels overwhelming or they wouldn't know where to start, I'm like, can you just once a week take like half an hour, go for a walk if you need to move your body, but just find some stillness to hear like maybe what's next for you, right? Sometimes, well, and in our society, it's we live from the neck up, right? We're just busy checking off our to-do list. We're never actually dropping into our body to like listen and figure out what we need. We're just trying to go on to the next thing. So I say, like, especially if you're single and you're dating, like, do you know what you're looking for in a partner, what you don't want in a partner? If you're in relationship, have you checked in about your relationship with your partner? Some people are like, yeah, we're great. We talk all the time. And I'm like, but talk about what? Like, do you talk about money? Do you talk about your budget and travel and dreams and values? Or do you talk about like your day and what's for dinner? Because there's a difference. So the first thing is like, couples aren't talking to each other, or they are, but they're keeping it really superficial, right? And I was like, there's a reason I named my business Deep. I think before I even recognized like those are the only kind of conversations I ever want to have. I remember talking to you about that too.
I think we were
Um,
bonding over just our shared dislike for small talk. It's like, let's get into
Seriously.
the, yes, let's dive in right away. I don't care what the weather's doing. I just want to know, like, what is bothering you right now?
Yeah. And like, I don't know if it's a
Uh,
Wisconsin thing, but people in Wisconsin are never happy with the weather. Like, we will always complain. And it's like, I'm not here for that negativity. Like, Alexa can tell me what the weather is going to be. Like, how's your marriage? What'd you do this weekend? How's your family? Like, that's what I want to know. Are you having sex? Like, how's the sex? You like, leave it to me to go like right in for that, you know?
And I think a lot of couples probably think that they're talking, but not really. Like I would imagine a lot of couples find themselves in a comfortable rhythm where
Mhm.
maybe there's no friction. I think something that you said recently, or maybe it showed up on your Instagram page, was, just because you're not fighting, like that's probably not the a great thing either. Like if there is no friction, can you talk a little bit more about that? If there's a couple and everything's
Mhm.
just like honky dory, like what do you think's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, they are in conscious relationship, and when they have a concern, they're able to bring it up safely and repair well. But typically, what's happening is they aren't talking about those things, right? Which was very much what was happening in my marriage, right? It's like we just didn't talk about anything ever, and when we did, it what didn't go well. And so when those conversations don't go well, it's easier to avoid them. And I don't know who, it must have been a client the other day, even. She had said something along the lines of, like, well, for the kids' sake, we just kept going and pretended everything was okay. But it's like inside, you're building up that anger and that resentment by not having the safe space to have these conversations. And I do really think that that's what coaching can allow for. Because it's like, listen, I'm not here to take sides. I'm going to lovingly call you both out on your bullshit, but like, we are going to pick one topic and try to start to finish repair that rupture, you know? And it's like, I remember the couple that I'm seeing right now that had like a little tiny rupture, and they brought it up in here and they're like, it's not even a big deal, but this is what we noticed, like you would be proud of us for XYZ. And as we were talking about it, it was very clear that like actually they had not repaired the rupture, they had just decided it was kind of minor and they were going to pick their battle. And I think that is my least favorite statement, is when people go, well, just pick your battles. No, because then you're avoiding, and that also causes resentment. And as we broke down that like conversation, it gave us time to pause and help the one partner drop into her body and recognize what was coming up for her that she had never communicated initially. And so it's like she was just holding that in her body, and it was going to stay there until we addressed it. And I was like, I'm so glad you guys brought up this seemingly insignificant thing, because it just demonstrated how it's all significant, you know?
And I would imagine in your work, you're bringing, like, you're essentially opening up the lines of communication for couples, which I think the illusion sometimes is there. So for couples, like, what does that check in look like? Can you walk us through, like, what is, if I wanted to check in with my spouse,
Yeah.
what does that look like?
And I say, you know, it depends where you guys are. Some people have gone to therapy and they're a little ahead of the game when it comes to communication. Most people are terrified, especially like I referenced at the beginning. A lot of us don't want to hear how we suck, how we have room to grow. Again, with love, like this could look better. And so we're trying to avoid those conversations. Checking in actually is like overwhelming and gives us anxiety, right? But if you can reframe that and know that, like, this will help make you stronger, like when you've fully repaired rupture, you come out the other side closer, ideally, than you were before, right? Whether you've been married for 2 years or 20, having those vulnerable, intimate conversations just allows for that intimacy to deepen, right? So I say, if you have not been doing them and they are terrifying to you, that's okay. You're not alone in that. And I think pick a day and time a week that feels like a non negotiable. So maybe it's like Sunday brunch. Like every Sunday, you know, whether you stay at home or go out, it's kind of like a date with your partner, because I believe you should be having at least one date a week with your partner, like minimum, right? And I get with little kids, that can look different. I have grace for that too. But then maybe to start, it's about like, what's going well? Or we know we want to take trips this year. Let's let this check in be about where we would like to travel. I think check ins could be around money. There should certainly be, both parties should be aware of the finances and what's going on with the budget and the money. But then when it feels like more of a ritual, something that you actually look forward to because you're connecting with your partner and it feels safe, then that's when you can start to work towards, okay, what's not going so well? What was hard this week? What would you like to look different? And just creating it kind of builds that resilience to those harder conversations if you make it a non negotiable.
And I like how you said it's something that's recurring, something where you don't have to sit down every week and figure out a time. It's a set day, a set time, ideally, where you have this space set aside. How about environment? I would imagine there's no phones, it's quiet. Like we are having this space that is minimizing all the outside influence. So, can you walk us through, like, I don't know if there's any tips in terms of like setting up your environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think intention matters, right? So if you're trying to have it at home with the kids running around instead of having like an in law or someone come over, or if they're little and that doesn't work, then you're doing it on a weeknight after the kids go to bed, right? Maybe it looks different for you, but yes, ideally there's no phones. And I already know because I've already got this pushback from a female client of mine, like, well, do I have to be responsible for scheduling them? And bringing him in and what we're going to talk
Adding to
about.
the
And it's
mental
like,
burden. Yeah.
the mental load. And I said,
Yeah.
no, sister, like alternate, right? Or 1 month it's you and 1 month it's him, or set that up, make that a check in. Like, okay, these are when we're going to schedule our check-ins for spring, maybe at the end of spring, or we can look forward to summer if we have to shift when our check-in is. But these are mine, these are yours, these are some of the things we need to go over, right? Should certainly be having a check-in around values, and I argue that values shift seasonally, because for me it's really important to cook food in my kitchen that's like whole food and paleo leaning, although my teenage son does not appreciate that. But
You're an ingredient household.
yes, exactly. And he's just like, where's the McDonald's? And I'm like, oh, what is happening?
Right.
So when baseball shows up in spring and summer, though, like sometimes we're eating Culvers at 9:30 at night. So this time of year, my value for healthy homemade food falls below my value for my son's baseball season, right? So I think values conversation should be happening regularly so that you know kind of the page that you're on, the page that your partner's on, how you can sort of meet in the middle to support each other.
I love that. And just again, having those open lines of communication. I will maybe put a plug. I think one thing that I've really enjoyed with my husband is having walks or going out for a ruck, having that time where you're outside. A lot of times there's, well, I should say, most of the time there's zero screens involved. You're walking in
Hmm.
the same direction. So that can be very great for any sort of conflict resolution. But if you're
Absolutely.
able to maybe get outside and get some movement, I feel like that kind of disarms versus sitting on the couch face to face and trying to maybe get to something that you've been stewing on for a while. And that might be a little
Yeah.
bit more comfortable for folks.
I agree. And I was going to say, especially with our weather getting nicer and just energetically, some people sitting in stillness is really hard, right? Even for meditating, it's like, oh my gosh, I would go crazy sitting still. So a walking meditation is a thing. And so it's like, yeah, if it's easier for you and your partner to walk or hike or go work out as part of your check in, absolutely do that. If you're feeling like your check ins aren't super safe, and maybe it would feel safer out in public because then you're less likely to raise your voice or get upset, you kind of mind your manners, do that. Go eat brunch somewhere else to feel like you can just say the thing and say it calmly from a grounded space. And I think that, like, again, intention matters and being grounded matters, because if you're living in your head about this thing that you're like pissed about and it comes out that way, of course your partner's going to be defensive right away. So it really needs to come from this place of like, hey, something I've been noticing, right? Or the story that I'm telling myself when you do this is XYZ, right? There's a way to soften it, and it truly, the intention behind what you're saying does matter.
Are you recommending to, I know you said the couple check in, you had mentioned earlier the individual check in. Do you recommend like checking in with yourself before you're sitting down and having that conversation as a couple?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you are already always doing that, but I think in order to show up to the check-in with, knowing what you want to discuss requires some homework, if you will, beforehand, right? It's not just showing up and going, all right, we've got this half hour or this hour. What do you want to talk about? I'm like, that's the same how I work. If I'm like, well, I got 2 hours on my calendar to do admin work, what do I want to do? I spend an hour figuring out what I want to do, right? So it's like, could you have a little bit more organization or intention on the front end to know, like, okay, one of our check ins is a budget check in. One of our check ins is a fun, positive dream. How are things going? Good check in. One is going to be a reality check in, like, okay, what's not working? However it works for people, just do the check in. That's the first part.
I would imagine that those first few check ins are probably a little uncomfortable too until you settle into that rhythm. But I would also think that couples are very, like, leaving that conversation hopefully feeling more connected, because I think whether it's with our partner or even with other people in general, I think a lot of us are just craving more intimacy. We're spending more time online, and we might be just sitting in the same room looking at our phones all night, for example, but it might feel like there's the illusion of connection, but really no connection there. It's just a way to kind of disorient or dissociate, if you will, outside of check ins. And
Mhm.
this could be for couples, it could be just individuals. When you're thinking about being more intentional or just like cultivating that intimacy with other people, we talked about our shared, not hatred, but dislike maybe for small talk. Like, how do we get there? How do we get more intimate? How do we lay the foundation for diving deeper into some of those relationships? Because I feel like post pandemic, we've kind of lost some of that human connection a little bit. And I think it's starting to come back. But I also feel like we need a little bit more practice too.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. Like, ideally for me, I'm a virtual coach. So I can coach from the beaches of Bali and do all the cool shit I want to do. And also, it's been really important for my local community to come into my space face to face and have these conversations because we can sit on the couch watching TV on opposite ends of the couch, scrolling our phone, so disconnected and just in the same room, right? And there's merit to parallel play, right? Maybe someone's watching a movie while someone's reading a book, and we're both doing that on the couch, sitting next to one another because we need our own time or space. But I think what I've noticed is it's even for me sort of coming out of this hibernation of winter, which is what winter is for. We are supposed to stay in and rest and sort of recover so that when weather like this shows up and awesome business things show up, we can say yes to everything we would like to say yes to because we've rested, right? But it's like even last night, putting my Queen Hervey outfit together with my girlfriend, we sat for hours talking about life. And she's like, I think I'm just missing connection. And it's like, yeah, you can go to work all day and get your workouts in and get your groceries and feed your children, but you're certainly not supposed to be talking to your children about your grown up things, right? They are your children. You are their parent, not their friend. There is a difference. And so it's like, how do we prioritize that connection? And it's like whether it's a virtual coffee chat with someone who doesn't live nearby, just to spend 20, 30 minutes talking about life. I think for me, the more authentic and vulnerable I am, and I do think I see this in other people too, the more other people have permission to show up that way. So it's like, again, you're not going to find me bitching about the weather or talking about the Brewers score, even though I know that stuff, right? What I want to know is like, how are you really? Don't just tell me you're good. What's good, right? I'm always going to ask that when my clients come in for coaching or even if it's virtual. It's like, that's the question I start with. Tell me something good
I
first.
love that. Just the rebuttal of like when people say good is what's good. Oh, I love that. I'm going
Yeah.
to steal that from you.
Yeah, like you don't get off easy with me. Like, what's good? What's going well?
Right.
I
Hmm.
want to know genuinely because the next time I see you, I'm able to ask you about that thing instead of that superficial, like, oh, okay, well, have a good day. Like, no, man, people want to talk about themselves. And we've just gotten to a point where I think we think no one cares because it is easier to just mind your own business.
And I think there's energy involved too. Like, there's a lot of energy, I think, to cultivate those connections. And I know I see that in myself. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I have this relationship that I really want to work on, but I have to also partition my energy. And I think if that's reciprocated with certain individuals, I'm thinking of one, friendship in particular. I feel like we're always proactively reaching out to each other instead of being the person that's always reaching out and not really getting anything back. So I think maybe being picky and choosy about those relationships. And one thing that you had said about just if we're more vulnerable, that opens other people up. And it makes me
Mhm.
think of a book I read. I can't remember. It might actually be Jenna Kutcher's How Are You Really? And I think maybe that was the one she was talking about giving an extra 5%. So we're always having this mask on or a filter, if you will, when we're talking with people, but maybe just taking a little bit of that filter back, giving somebody an extra 5% of what you're withholding. So maybe that's being extra vulnerable. And
Mhm.
like you said, that can hopefully open them up. So if you feel like you're withholding, like maybe throwing out a little dark humor or throwing out something that feels uncomfortable to share because how you had mentioned oftentimes that does get reciprocated or people are like, oh my gosh, me too, and that just helps us connect on a deeper, faster level.
And I think we all have more in common than we have different, right? And so it is being mindful, right? I think reciprocity is important. And that's something I've been journaling about as um, I have this little like thing that I do when I journal from Stephanie from Sister Circle. She first introduced it, and it's three amazing things that have happened lately, right? So think like gratitude, three amazing things about to happen, and three amazing things my future self has achieved. And one of those future self achieved, like goals, if you will, were prioritizing loving and reciprocal relationships. Because at some point, if you're the only one putting in effort, it's like, okay, maybe they're an introvert. Maybe they don't like me. I don't really know. I'm going to do my best. But like, if they're not matching your energy, maybe they're in a season where you just got to let that go and put it into people that are showing up, right? Because you do need to be, again, boundaries with your own capacity and your own energy, what makes sense. Um, but it is important to kind of discern where you want it to go. So, and actually, I learned this from my last partner. So, even though him and I are no longer together, I always am like friends with my exes, right? Because you taught me stuff, even if you weren't my person. And this is when I was still that like high achieving hustle kind of woman, right? And he goes, question for you. If you walked by someone in a park on a bench crying, would you stop and see if they're okay? And at that time, I was like, probably not. I probably have to get to work or pick up my son or I'm
You're
on
like,
my
I
way
don't have time for
somewhere.
that.
I don't have
Like,
time for that. Right. And so, what I was thinking as we were talking about relationships, it's like, again, at the end of the day, when you're 100 and you're on your deathbed, who's there with you? Who got to enjoy the journey with you? And if you don't slow down and make time for those people, you're going to be alone there. And so, it's like, as I started to slow down and soften into my feminine, I recognized I don't want to be the woman that would walk by that person crying. I created that version of myself because of what I thought was important. But once I took a step back and realized I should stop for that person. And now, what I would do if I did have a client or my son to pick up is I would message them and say, hey, I'm going to be a little late. This thing came up. And my people, my family, my clients would go, no problem, you know? And like there was a real life situation where this happened with a dog, not a human. But I had just come back from my sweat lodge training last fall where we talked all about impeccability. That was the intention for the weekend. And it was Monday morning. I was taking my son to school. I have to teach yoga at 9. He has to be to school at 8. Well, I actually have to be there at like 8:30, right, to get the studio ready. It's raining. We are on Losey Boulevard, which is one of the busiest. The intersection of Green Bay and Losey, where his high school is bananas, especially at 8 in the morning when everyone's going to work. And there is a dog running in the boulevard in the rain next to traffic. And I'm just like, okay, I can't. I sometimes I see those dogs and I go, I don't have time for this. And that was one of those pivotal moments where I was like, okay, sister, practice what you preach, right? And
this is
Ryder's
like
like,
an
Mom,
identity shift, but I want to be the
seriously,
person that stops for
that stops
this.
for the dog. Speaking of dogs, this is Apollo.
Yeah.
He's 14.
Hello,
he
Apollo.
he loves to come to work. He gets such purpose here.
I was gonna
And
say, like, he's like doggies. Are you talking about me?
yeah, no, yeah, and it's like I've left so many dogs running stray. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's my neighbor's dog, they'll be okay. And other times I'm like, I wish I had time to stop and do this. And so it was that moment. And my son looked at me and he's like, are you gonna go back and pick up that dog, Mom? And I said, yeah. I like can't not now, you know? And so there I am. I like literally parked in the lane, in the road. It's a 2-lane road. I just put my flashers on with 8 a.m. traffic, being like, sorry guys, like I gotta go see. And I really had a feeling that this dog belonged to this one house next to the fire station. Lights were on, no one was answering the door. And I was like, okay, best case scenario, the homeowner's at work. And by the end of the day, this dog will be reunited. But now I'm sitting with this wet dog in my car realizing I'm supposed to go teach yoga. And at the last minute, I text my group chat of teachers and I say, I know this is last minute. If you guys cannot cover my class, I will figure this out. I could leave the dog in the car for the hour or whatever I have to do. Like I can figure it out. Thankfully, somebody was able to cover my class. I could take it to the vet. It wasn't chipped. Long story short, the lady, thank you, Facebook, right? I put it on Facebook right away in our Lost Pets group. Sure enough, she was at work. She came to pick up. The dog's name was Lola. She was such a sweetie. I think she was like a yellow lab, maybe.
Oh,
Turns out the children were home, but the daughter, because she didn't know who I was, wouldn't open the door. And I said, actually, that's really great. I'm glad she didn't
that was a
open the
great
door,
test.
you know.
You both
But
passed the test.
right. And I was like, yeah. And I'm happy to sit home with this sweet dog. Like our dog, the dog's got along, everything was fine. However, the owner of the yoga studio that I work at felt a certain way about me not taking my job seriously. And she asked me to call her, and I knew right away I was in trouble. And I was like, okay, I teach yoga because I appreciate the wisdom and like the awareness that goes in our body. Just everything about yoga is my jam. And it's not like I do it for the money, right? Yoga teachers aren't paid well, but I always take my work seriously. I've like at that time had never asked anyone to sub a class for me, especially not last minute. I normally wouldn't do that, but I felt called in this moment to do this thing. And I think she had her own experience with picking up a lost dog that was a negative experience that maybe colored her vision of like what I was doing. And for her, it meant I wasn't taking her place of business seriously. And I said, maybe we need to have a little further conversation about this to see where our values lie. Because for me, if I had a massage client or a coaching client or a Reiki client, and I text them and said, you guys, I'm really sorry I'm running late. I found this dog. I would like to take it to the vet. My people would say, oh my gosh, of course. Is there anything we can do to help you? And it showed me in that moment how you kind of are able to discern who your people are and who are not, right? And her and I have had so many good conversations since then. I kind of illuminated a theme that had been coming up from other teachers and stuff too. We were able to talk vulnerably about how we were feeling. And she said, I can absolutely see that you did nothing wrong. And I appreciate you showing me this part of myself that I can work on. And I am going to work on it. And we were able to come out of that phone call. And I was like, who even am I? Like, I did the thing, I said the thing, I had the conversation, and like, we're great, you know?
Immediately I think of Brene Brown, like leaning into those uncomfortable conversations. Because had that conversation not happened, I just imagine, like, on her end, a lot of resentment stewing. You're probably thinking, why is she still treating me, XYZ way? And being that you were able to put that out in the open, it sounds like a good learning opportunity, like you had mentioned.
Yeah. And using your voice is hard, which is where a lot of my clients come in with neck stuff, right? Like, yeah, your neck is tight because we're not comfy or we don't feel safe saying the thing, having the boundary, voicing a need. I've done a lot of work there and I'm still working on it. And it's so
Is
wild
this
how
why
these
my neck hurts?
yeah. And I tell my clients, I say, realistically, if it doesn't feel safe for you to talk to your partner about this thing, start with journaling, write it down, right? At least you're still moving that energy, getting it out. And honestly, when we journal, for me, it connects so many dots and brings some insight into maybe what I wasn't seeing, but like the full picture. That then when I do have the courage to bring it up to the person, I feel a little bit more grounded because it's like, oh, yeah, and this is maybe like my side of the street that I could work on too.
How you had mentioned check in, it makes it more of a ritual. Like if you have
Hmm.
things that you look forward to that go along with that, it takes the grind of it out where you're like, oh, we have our check in today. It's like, okay, well, I look forward to this. This is our time to just disconnect from everything else, really tune into each other. And I could see where having like a hands on experience is probably going to help foster that vulnerability as well. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, or maybe one of your check-ins is like, we're just going to give each other back massages. Like that, it's intentional time together where we just get to love on each other. And you don't always get that either with life and business and kids. And it's like at minimum, maybe you're lighting that stick of Palo Santo because energetically and spiritually, it's cleansing, right? So we're just cleansing the energy of the space. Maybe it's before, maybe it's after your check-in, maybe it's both just to make sure like you feel good, And it does, it becomes a ritual, which is like then something it's easier to stay devoted to and look forward to.
And ritual sounds so much better, I think, than habit. I think that was something that came up at Sister Summit was the
Hmm.
idea of rituals and rhythms. And I just
Hmm.
love that terminology because a ritual sounds so sacred and something that
Hmm.
seems so like ooey and yummy
Yeah.
versus a habit. We're like, okay, well, a habit tracker. It just sounds more rigid and formal and something that you have to do versus a ritual feels so much more refreshing and replenishing.
Seriously, yeah, supportive. And it's, I think, for the same reason that I've leaned into using the word devotion over discipline, because I think
Ooh, I love
discipline
that.
sounds a little more masculine, a little more like aggressive and harsh and like, oh, to be disciplined. For me, I'm like, if you were to tell a little kid, like, you need to be more disciplined, they'd be like, I don't, whatever. I don't know what that means. But like thinking of devotion, it's like, I am devoted to my spiritual practices. I prioritize meditation and journaling and pulling my tarot card in the morning. It's how I start my day so that when I step into my workspace, I have the space to hold my clients through whatever they're going through because I've got my stuff out of the way already. And that devotion showing up at least Monday through Friday for sure. And I also make time on the weekends. It might just be not first thing in the morning, but I'm like, yeah, even if I look at my like movement and physical practices, not as discipline necessarily, but as devotion, because if I believe that my body is this temple and it is sacred and it is housing my light and my soul and my love, how do I keep this clean? I stay devoted to it, right? So it's a softer way for me to look at it.
So many women struggle to take that time for themselves. And I think so much in the work that I do, I see a lot of emotional eating. And it's about the food, but it's not about the food. Usually it comes down to not creating these rituals or devotion time, like you mentioned, where you have other healthier outlets for things like stress or emotions, whether that's movement, whether that's journaling, doing something just to help with that output. Because I think, especially as high achieving women, it's input, input, input. We always have something coming in. And a lot of times there's a lot of discomfort that brings up. And I've even encouraged a lot of my clients like, don't even put earbuds in. That's just more input. At the end of the day,
Hmm.
we need something that's going to unload. You've got input all day. What's something that's going to be output? Whether it's doing a few yoga poses or doing some stretches, some journaling. How can you clear your cache at the end of the day? I had somebody say that and I was like, I love that. Like on your computer, you're clearing your browser. How can you wipe that clean, especially before you go to bed? Because we know the impact of poor health impacts, negatively impacts everything. So if you have those devotions and just reframing it how you had mentioned, I think can be so helpful because there's a lot of leaky boundaries that I think show up and end up really biting us in the butt if we if we don't really stay firm in them.
Yeah. And I think even that is a lifelong assignment, if you will, right? Because trusting ourselves, not abandoning ourselves, takes a lot of intention and effort too, right? As a former eater of my feelings, right? In my marriage where I was not happy, we weren't fighting, we also weren't having sex. And so it's like I just found love in food. And once I was aware that I was doing that, it became this process of, okay, what is it that I need right now? That I would go to a glass of wine or chocolate or whatever I'm going towards. What is that providing for me? And how can I provide that myself without that thing? So now, if I have something like that, it's like, no, I'm doing it because it's a treat and I enjoy it and I don't do it all the time. I'm very mindful of that. But it takes a lot of awareness and a lot of practice and a lot of grace because you're going to mess up too. You're going to get stressed and want potato chips or whatever people's like vices, right? And so just being able to slow down enough to even notice and pause, right? It's like I talk about when we're fighting our trauma response. Sometimes we freeze, sometimes we get defensive. It's almost immediate. It's how our ego protects us. And so when you think of this idea of reacting versus responding, right? We are reactive, it is our nature. And when we recognize that we are triggered, the move is to stop, pause, breathe, notice the trigger because that's our responsibility. and then decide how you'd like to respond from there instead of raising our voice or swearing, right? So it's the same thing with eating our feelings, going, oh, automatically I want to do this thing. And I know I do this for comfort. What do I need comfort from right now? Like, what's coming up for me? And just being able to slow down and have that space. And even the client I saw yesterday, she came in for a Reiki ritual. So we did massage and Reiki and a little bit of coaching. And I remember when she came in, she was like, everything's great. I've been in this yes season. I have all this stuff going on and I feel really good about it. I've switched up my work schedule for summer. I'm going to get off a little earlier so I can garden. And I was like, why is this chick here? Like, she sounds like she's got it all figured out. Again, ego. But when you do Reiki, you kind of set that ego aside. You listen intuitively. I always tell my clients, especially clients that are new to Reiki, that it's like my higher self and your higher self are having a conversation the whole time. And so whatever I hear in your tone of voice, the way that you would say it to yourself. And so sometimes I'll hear something and I'll be like, that was so sassy. Like, I don't want to say that to her. And then I go, but that's the only way she's going to understand it. Right. And so as I was going through her session, I was like, oh, I see why she's here. Because all the things that she's doing are tasks, right? Gardening. She's meditating ish. She's reading and reflecting on it, but none of them are actually still or quiet. Everything's another thing to do. And I said, when you remember that you're a human being and that like it is your birthright simply to exist, that requires rest, right? Part of the ritual, the rhythm, the rest, right? That is stressful for people whose nervous system is just going, 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 going because it's safe there. And all of a sudden they have to stop and they don't know
There's a lot
what the
of
hell to do.
discomfort in that stillness.
Yeah. And so she's like, what does that even look like? And I said, yeah, great question. And I said, for me, this winter, I leaned into Netflix hard. And I told her, I said, I used to judge TV because, like, I got shit to do. I don't have time for TV. But then I heard on a spiritual podcast, actually, that watching TV is actually a way that we meditate. Literally, people say, I just want to put a show on and like check out for a little bit. That is meditation, right? And so once I reframed TV, I was like, ooh, I am here for the TV. And so I said, laying on the couch watching a show, not while you're doing something else, but just simply finding something fun to watch. I said, or she's a yoga person, but we confirmed her yoga was the power yoga. And I said, as a yoga teacher, those power yoga classes are always full with a wait list. Your yoga nidra class, where you lay down for an hour in meditation, there's always room in those classes, right? Because no one likes that work. And so I said, for you, instead of a power yoga, maybe you're trying a yoga nidra where you just simply get cozy with all your props. We guide you through a little meditation and then you just exist. Start with something like that. And so for people where that feels scary, like you definitely have to start small, right? I said, maybe it's just you make a cup of coffee, you sit out in your backyard and you just enjoy that cup of coffee with nothing, no earbuds, nothing else. And her eyes got real big. And I said, even if it's just for a couple minutes, right? Set a timer, start small, because your nervous system is absolutely going to react to that if you've been in go mode for so long. So it's like that's sort of the crux of my work. And it's like, I'm here to help couples. That's my passion. I love love. And for the longest time, I would say, I don't care if you want to stay married or get divorced. It doesn't matter. I'm not here to tell you what to do. And I'm not, and I won't. But I do love love. And at the end of the day, you go with you. So whether you stay married to that person or you get divorced, you most likely still have work to do. And so it seems like it's always coming back to the relationship that we have with ourselves, right? Because how present are you for your job or your partner or your kids if you can't even be present with yourself?
Oof. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack and I think give listeners, but I cannot agree more. And circling back to kind of how we started that is talking about like food and emotional eating and sitting in stillness. I see with a lot of women where eating is just something to do. It's still something to do maybe we have the fight, freeze, or feed, like, adding that. It's something to do, it's something to distract, and to sit in
Mhm.
that stillness is so uncomfortable and it's something that gets comfortable with time. Like as you practice it, like any sort of skill, that's something that comes a little bit easier. Do you have any resources that you like whether it's podcasts, journaling, prompts, books? Like if something struck somebody today, are there resources that you find yourself recommending?
I think like my OG, I mean, listen, right now I'm listening to this Tantric Life with Layla Martin because I'm so curious about Tantra. It's tying together my Reiki and spirituality with my sex and relationship coaching. It brings it full circle. And I'm like, oh, now as a forever student, I'm like, yeah, we'll learn this. Right now, I'm just listening to the podcast. But I think my OG podcast was Gabby Bernstein, her Dear Gabby podcast. It just always brings me such a sense of peace when I listen to her podcast. I'm actually doing her abundance challenge right now. It's like a 21-day challenge on her app for like $37. And it's just that reminder. She's actually offering the same meditation every single day, which I also think is important. So being mindful to listen to that in the morning and in the evening. And I think more than what to read or what to listen to, the real work is not to keep absorbing all this information because people watch reels. I'm not a real person. I have to make them for work, but I don't consume them very often because that's just not my cup of tea. I'd rather read a book or something.
Good for you.
Um,
Yeah.
I know. And I'm like, I kind of wish I was because I think there's cool shit to learn on there. That's my capacity for techno. I'm like old, right? I'm like 39, going to be 40. Technology is overwhelming. I do what I like have to do and I kind of forget the rest. But more than taking in all this information is, can you learn one thing and learn it well? Right. So, like, even if there's something we talked about on this episode that really resonated with you, can you sit with it? Can you meditate on it? Can you journal it? Can you actually embody it? Right. Again, living up here, we know a lot. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to check in weekly. Okay. Are you doing that? Do that first before you jump to learn the next thing. Because it's like even couples, client, they'll leave my office feeling this relief. Like they've finally connected and had a hard conversation and they have their check-in on the calendar and they're like, okay, we're good now. And I'm like, I love that for you. And also tell me how, I'll check in a few months later and it's like, how are those check-ins going? Oh yeah, we haven't been doing them. hmm Right. And so it's like not always taking in new stuff, but really embodying what you do know, right? We know to get our sleep. We know to drink our water. We know to move our body. We know to eat well. Are you actually doing those four things right now? Because if you're not, before you take on something new, why don't we get back to the basics and honor our body with those things too?
That's an excellent note to leave listeners with, too. And that's what we're all about here on the Sugar and Strength podcast. I think all of those things, internal and external, it's ultimately comes down to what are you doing for yourself. And while that
hmm
might sound selfish, it really changes how you show up for the others that you love. And as easy as it is to put your kids or your spouse or work in front of all of those things, you have to show up as the best version of you. And I think that's one thing that you really challenged. You had a 10-minute talk at Summit and you just asked us, like, how many of us valued our spouse before our work or our business. As you would imagine, the entire room raises their hands. And then your next question, how many of us act like that? And the whole
Yeah.
room, the hands go down. So I think just living in alignment with those values, how you talked about today, I think is just so important. So if somebody wants to learn more about you or connect with you and your work, where can they go?
Yeah, thank you for that. So everything is Deep with Cailee Rae, right? So the website, deepwithcayleerae.com, Instagram, Deep with Cailee Rae. I'm really excited for Facebook. I've created like a Facebook community that I can kind of check in with regularly. I host every other Thursday. I do a virtual session just for free for people to show up and kind of talk about what's coming up for them. Not necessarily am I coaching, but it's like a place where you can just sort of be seen and heard and supported. So my link for that too is on my Instagram page. So I'd say those are the main ways to contact me. I'm an Instagram homie for sure.
Perfect. I love that. And how about you? Are there any projects or events that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think, well, so specifically, I'm prioritizing coaching. Again, as a Manny Jen, I'm like, I make candles and I do massage and I do Reiki and I teach
All
yoga.
the
And
things.
my focus right now is, individual and couples coaching is what I'm really excited about. And stemming from that, from this recent immersion, I hosted an intimacy dinner, and so I'm excited to think around this a little more. So it was a group of women, and I got to tell them all what to do in the kitchen. All seven of us were making dinner at the same time. It was like the best. I'm like, man, you can make dinner real quick when you have some help in the kitchen. But then the main piece was sitting around the dining room table together. And I asked questions like what intimacy means to them. We talked about how many different types of intimacy there are, because again, that's another conversation. Guys tend to really appreciate physical intimacy and forget that there's also emotional intimacy and some other types, right? And then with dessert, it was, and how would you want to deepen the intimacy that you have with yourself? And that was kind of the first time bridging. Like, I love cooking and I love talking about love and sex and intimacy. And from that, all those women were like, you need to do this more. And so I'm kind of in the brainstorm phase of, do I host more dinners where it's just women?
Yes.
Or maybe it's couple. Yeah, right. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, for women, it
Both.
feels safe. And then
Mm-hmm.
for couples, but I think couples would need to each be maybe at their own table. I think trying to have people talk about their sex life in front of other people could be a little intimidating. Not everyone's as like vulnerable as I am. And I get that. So just kind of sitting with what I want that to look like maybe come fall. I know summer's really busy for everybody, but for now, it is just the coaching, is what I keep reminding myself, one thing at a time.
I love it. Oh my, if you do another one of these dinners, I would love to know about it and share. So,
And that's the thing. Like, I could do them anywhere, right? Like, I could start here in lacrosse where I'm at, but it's like
can you come to
just
my
making a,
house? Yeah.
yeah, seriously. And that was part of it too. Like, could this be a date night for a couple? Could I come in? Could we make dinner? Could we coach, essentially, have the intimacy conversation? Could I bring my massage table and offer massage or Reiki or yoga? Like, could I make it a whole thing? And again, my Manny Jen brain is like, running wild with all the ideas. And right now it's like, okay, we're going to start with one thing and we'll go from there. So, yeah, I would
Yes.
love to. I think my long term, 10-year plan that I hope is like a 5-year plan is that I have my home in the woods with my sauna and my hot tub and my like walking trail and my deer in the backyard, where couples can come and stay for a weekend or a few days during the week. And we do this sort of intensive or repair lab where it's like, okay, we're going to do yoga. We're going to make breakfast. We're going to get the body work, right? We're going to coach. We're going to do all the things. And ideally, especially if there's like a rupture that keeps coming up or hasn't been healed, like, we're going to make that the focus for the time. So, again, that feels a little far away right now, but that's kind of the direction I hope to be able to go, because I think so many couples just kind of pretend everything's okay, right? On paper, they look good, but at home, they're not okay. And that breaks my little heart, you know?
Yeah, and it's just comfortable, I think, to sit in that. We think of, bringing up whatever confrontation or feelings those are brings up that discomfort. And yeah, we don't like to sit in the uncomfy. So I'm super excited for your future retreats. I'm imagining that this is something when you go through your 3 things that your future self is going to accomplish. Like, what a fun thing to be on there. And I appreciate your insight and time today. I know listeners have gotten so much wisdom from you. I just, the moment I met you, I was like, this girl is amazing. And like I said at the beginning, you are a vibe. So,
Thank you.
yes, keep that going. I hope that this isn't the, first and only conversation with you, and
No
look
way.
forward. Yeah.
I'm like, you've already got me rucking, although I hurt my toe. Did I tell you I hurt my toe real bad? And
No.
so I've had to take a pause. My metal umbrella stand smashed my toe. And so it's just recovering slowly. But I'm like,
That
I
darn
can't wait to
umbrella
get back to.
stand.
I
Oh.
know. And there's like a whole story with it. And I was like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
think I just need to get rid of it. But I was like, yeah, I have the vest to do the thing. Thank you for reminding me again. Like, if women here can just support each other and build each other up, like, we'll be so much better off. So I really
I
appreciate this opportunity.
I agree. So, well, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Kayla. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Sugar and Strength podcast. If you're looking to dive deeper into your relationships and cultivate deeper connections, I will link all of Kaylee's resources below, including her Art of Intimacy Facebook group. And if you're looking to dive deeper into blood sugar, be sure you check out my 5-week blood sugar breakthrough cohort. We are going to be starting June 1st, so what better than to start a fresh month and a fresh week by getting to know yourself better with CGM. I will link more information below. And this round, I have included some options to add in 90 minutes of one-on-one coaching. So if you're looking to get the benefits of a group with a little bit of extra personalization, you have the option to either use that 90 minutes in one 90-minute session, or you can break that up into two 45-minute sessions. With that, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you on the next one.